February 28th, 2020. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said. Got to roll through this one because I want to get this out quick so you can listen to some of the Friday Sam Houston stuff and then the Saturday all over Gulfstream and Sam Houston. A couple interviews, one with Dan Cronin. We talk college basketball. We talk some UCLA, USC, Pac-12, some of the teams that are on the bubble. And then we talk with the Pick Six King, Jon Stettin, little kind of state of the union for horse racing, kind of everything going on. And then we break down Gulfstream Park races 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 on that Fountain of Youth card. And we spend a little time on the Fountain of Youth. So hope you enjoy this episode. Before we get into those interviews, I have to get something off my chest, though. I have to vent a little bit. So I had a really good day of handicapping on Wednesday at Sam Houston. If you were playing along, we did very well. Unfortunately, we could have done a whole lot better. I gave out, as on the Sam Houston segment, a Pick 5 ticket that was a winning Pick 5 ticket, and there were 0 winning Pick 5 tickets. What ended up happening is I myself screwed up when I was betting. I was kind of just doing a few different things, and so I put together the ticket real quick, kind of off of memory, and of course I left out one horse in the third leg of the sequence, which was race number 8. And in race number 6, which was the first leg of the Pick 5 sequence, my top selection ends up winning the race and pays $48. That is Destiny Awaits. That was one of the horses that I actually tweeted out. Pays $48. And so then I go back and I look at my ticket because I'm like, oh, wow, holy crap, I got this $48 winner right away. Like, I just to confirm, let me make sure who I have the rest of the way through. And I noticed immediately that I left the one horse out who ended up being the 6 in race number 8. So I went back and I played a Pick 4 in race number 7 using all the rest of the horses that I should have used on the Pick 5 all the way through. Sure enough, in race 7, the 2 headlining wins at 4-1 who I had. In race number 8, that was the race that I made the mistake. I had 1-5-6. It came in 6-5-1. I only had 1 and 5 on the ticket that I bet myself, but the 6 wins at 14-1. And then in race number 9, my top selection, Blushing Kitten, wins at 15-1. And in race number 10, I ended up hitting a Pick 4 that paid $6,500. And if you would have just played the numbers that I gave you in the Pick 4, you would have hit. If you would have played the numbers in the Pick 5 I gave you, you would have hit. You would have been the only person that hit. The Pick 5 pool was $25,000, and there is a Pick 5 carryover. You're welcome, because if I bet that Pick 5, there's no carryover. So anybody that's playing the Pick 5 carryover at Sam Houston, that's because of me, because of the idiocity of me. Although it was one of those things where I try not to be too hard on myself for it, because when you bet as many races as we do, some of us do, and as many different tracks and as many different wagers, you're going to make mistakes here and there. It's just like anything, right? Like, you could be a 95% free throw shooter and you're going to miss a free throw sometimes. It's not the mistake, it's kind of how do you respond from that. I was able to catch the mistake early on, play a Pick 4, and still salvage that. Could you imagine if I didn't play the Pick 5, or if I did play the Pick 5, didn't notice my mistake, and then that was the only miss I had there? Because the Pick 5, the 4 out of 5s, paid back awesome. Still, because nobody hit the pool. So Pick 5's, like, 4 correct is paying $800. They're just unfortunate there that it was just a bonehead move by me. You know, you make a mistake, but I was able to come back and capitalize and able to get that Pick 4, hit the Pick 4. I had a couple other Pick 3s throughout the day, and if you noticed, a lot of the horses that we gave out to were winning. Race number 1, Quinn Ella was our top pick, won and paid $11. Race number 3, our top selection, Bob's Bad Boy, won, paid $16.60. Race number 5, or no, it wasn't the 5th, it was the 6th where we mentioned Destiny Awaits, top selection wins, pays $48.40. In race number 9, our top selection wins, pays $33, a 15-1 shot. So this was one of the best handicapping days of my life. I made some money. I wish the gambling would have been a little bit better, but it's nice is that we were able to still make some money. I won't be greedy, and plenty of ammo now, and can take care of a few things, and plenty left to play over for some of these big weekend wagers. So yeah, that was a frustrating one, and I know it's going to happen now. Everyone's going to come back and play all the Sam Houston picks today and tomorrow, Friday and Saturday, and they're all going to be just terrible. But you know what? we're going to make some money. I'm starting to feel good now. I'm starting to feel good. So first up, let's get into our interview with Keeneland Dan. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, and then following that, it's going to be Keeneland Dan talking some college basketball, and then we get into the U.S. horses that are running in Saudi Arabia in the big race, and then we talk. He gives a couple of thoughts at Gulfstream Park. So kick back and enjoy this discussion with Keeneland Dan Cronin. One of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast is Cindy Carava, full-service realtor, and I am here over in Glendora at Coldwell Banker with Cindy Carava. Cindy, how was 2019 for you? Tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff you were working on.
Hi, Gino. Thanks for having me. 2019 was just really great. I had a great year selling homes all the way from Altadena, Arcadia, Monrovia, out to Upland and Ontario just recently. The market has been really good. We're looking forward to 2020 with an increase in home prices about 5.8% this year, opposed to last year where it was a little softer. We saw more like homes averaging about 3.5% in increase in value. It's also looking great for buyers. The interest rates right now are going to be staying under 4%. So if you've been on the fence about thinking about buying a home, now is the time to do so with interest rates still staying low.
And you offer more services than just the buying, selling, and leasing homes. Tell us about some of the other services that you offer and what a full-service realtor really is.
So you're right, Gino. Besides me being a full-service realtor of finding properties for my clients to buy or selling their homes or finding rentals for them, I also have a plethora of resources like handyman, contractors, electricians, plumbers. I even, like I said, if you're thinking about getting a home loan, I actually work with 2 great lenders that I can recommend to anybody.
And you're all over the internet, social media, websites. Let us know some of the places where we can find you. I know I've seen some reviews on Yelp and on Zillow. Everyone always has positive things to say. Everybody hears me raving about you all the time. But where can everyone else find out information about you or contact?
Thank you, Gino. Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And you can contact me on my website, which is www.cindycarava.com, or my email, which is cindyc.realtor@gmail.com, or feel free to call or text me on my cell phone, which is 626-394-6400.
Cindy is awesome. She's one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever met. I promise you, you will enjoy every minute you interact with her. So thank you very much, Cindy. Appreciate all of your support from That's What G Said podcast.
Thank you, Gino. Have a great day, everyone.
Coming off a very good night for the 2 local LA Pac-12 teams, we have to bring back on Keeneland Dan Cronin, brother of Mick Cronin, the head coach of UCLA basketball. I'm a big USC fan, and it was a great night for both USC and UCLA. We welcome Dan in. Dan, what's crazy for you is your schedule has changed a little bit. Now you got to stay till 8 o'clock to watch 8 o'clock Pacific time to watch these games. The start of these UCLA games, you're not getting a whole lot of sleep now. And on a night like last night, probably didn't really need a lot because that was a hell of a win. Now 6 in a row for UCLA, 8 of 10. They win on a game-winning shot at the buzzer, a big 3, and you have to be ecstatic. And I'm sure your brother is just pumped with the way this team is playing.
Yeah, pumped is an understatement. I shocked, disbelief. I was out there in November and then again at the end of January. And, at the end of January, you could see some improvement, but you never, ever dreamed that they could put a run together like this. And it's all just making big shots, learning the personnel, and then the 7 or 8 guys that are getting to play, they're all digging in and, doing what they're supposed to do on defense. And I mean, every single one of them is doing exactly what they need to do. And I mean, last night, Jake Kyman coming off the bench and catching fire like that. I mean, he's done it a couple times this year. So it's not like it's the first time. And it was like, as soon as he made that first one, you could see the other 4 guys say, uh-oh, here we go. Let's get him the ball. And there's not many teams that'll do that kind of stuff. They just go ahead and play and they don't even think about it. And I mean, Arizona State is really, really good. I mean,
They're hot. They're like the hottest team in the country, and they have a legitimate stud closer against a UCLA team that is really, really young. For you to pull out that game when it was close down the stretch was just so impressive. That's the point I want to kind of harp on a little bit, Dan. We're all kind of getting caught up in how good this team is and how well they're playing right now. One thing that I just keep looking at, this is a really, really young team, and they're not a team that's going to be losing some of those young players to the NBA, next year, most likely. This is a team that seems like they're going to be very good even next year and the next couple of years moving forward.
Well, their top 8 players are all back. Chris Smith, who you saw some glimpses over the last month, a couple of people out in LA said, well, he might leave. And I said, well, he would be absolutely crazy to leave because he's not even on any draft boards, but you can see the potential there. And if he has 30 more games under his belt at 20 years old, he's only going to be 20 years old as a senior. I mean, he'll be a middle first round possible lottery pick if he comes back and they dominate next year, which if you got everybody back, you got the number 1 point guard in the country coming in. You got the other kid from California who's a really, just mean, nasty defender that's going to be a really, really good player in Clark. And then there's still, as you know, because USC may add one of them, there's 3 big-time guys still out there, all top 10 guys that have not signed yet, that both schools are in on, that have a chance with, and you sign one of those guys, and then there really is no ceiling. So, yeah, I'm excited for this year, but then I looked at next year and think, oh, my. This could really turn into something special. And what's really neat is the first couple games out there, I kept looking around going, where is everybody? Why is there nobody here? And all I heard from everybody there was excuses. And I said, it sounds like when Mick took over at Cincinnati, all the excuses. Oh, well, it's LA. There's so much to do. There's so much going on. The ticket prices are high. Our team hasn't been great. Those are all excuses. You got to come. If you're a blue blood, you come. And all they needed was a little bit of excitement, get the team rolling a little bit, and boom, they all show up. I'm hearing the game's just about sold out for Saturday. And, I'm sure the USC-UCLA game next week will be sold out, even though it's across town, because everybody from both schools is going to want to come. So, that'll be an exciting atmosphere, too. So hopefully both teams can keep winning and send these Arizona teams home 0-2 on Saturday.
I think Hurley had said that was the best atmosphere he's seen at a UCLA game since Lonzo a couple years ago, when they were there with those teams. And that Bruin crowd was really pumped up late. That was the loudest I've seen them in a while. They were into the game. And what about last night's game, to me, what was really impressive a lot of the time, UCLA was up and they had the game in hand, most of the game they were leading. And generally when like a more veteran team with a closer like Remy Martin comes back, usually that team ends up winning. And for UCLA to be able to, they went from up by 6 to down by 4 in a matter of a minute or two. And a lot of young teams right there, that's when you kind of wilt. And it's you know what? Okay,
absolutely.
This wasn't our night. And the fact that they were able to come back when they were still down 2 possessions, get to the free throw line a couple of times. I mean, Tiger Campbell, his shooting night wasn't incredible, but the way he was controlling the game, passing the ball around, I think he had 14 assists, something like that. You're seeing these kids mature and grow. And this was a moment last night. That was a moment that all those UCLA fans and students in the audience that were there, they're going to come back now the next few times because of that game. That's the game and a moment that I think they needed to be able to kind of pull some of the fans back in and say, wow, you know what? This team has got it. Dan, since we talked last, I think you've won 4 in a row. And we were talking at that point about how things were turning around and the team was playing really well. And we're not talking about wins against the bottom dwellers of the Pac-12. We're talking about going on the road and beating Colorado and a very good Utah team who's good at home. They're really good at home. That's a tough place to win at. They kicked the crap out of USC, we saw. And then UCLA, they beat up Arizona at Arizona. They beat up, they got a win against ASU. And what was nice, and just kind of following you on social media, and when we talked, it was hard, 5 weeks ago to project that UCLA could be a tournament team because you're looking at their schedule going, well, they're going to just have to win. But one point that you kept making is that it's sometimes it's a blessing in disguise when you have to play better teams because. So what's crazy, Dan, is that, there's any of like 4 teams at the bottom of the last 4 in, first 4 out, first buys. And it seems like every year now, there are all these Pac-12 teams. There's always 2 or 3 Pac-12 teams. This year, there might be 4 of them. So what happens in these next 2 or 3 games is going to be really, really important.
Yeah, and I think the biggest difference this year with the Pac-12, and I know we're a little bit more biased now that I'm part of it, in the last few years, when you looked at the RPI top 7 leagues, the Pac-12 was always like 5th, 6th, or 7th. Well, this year, they're 3rd in the RPI. So, and I know they don't look at individual teams' RPIs, but they do look at what conferences are the best. The RPI top conferences versus, like the ACC is way down this year in the RPI as far as, league. And I think that affects seeding. I think it affects how many teams. And, we always joke as Dayton's 45 minutes for me that it's always a Pac-12 team. It's like, what do? They send the Pac-12 team every year to the first 4. Yep. And it might happen again because UCLA, Southern Cal, and Stanford are all right there. So it might happen again. The only thing I pray is they don't try to get cute and put Mick in against Cincinnati.
Because that would be, I know that was, they love doing stuff like that too.
Oh, and in Dayton, to where, oh my gosh, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, that would be that's a lot to think of. But you'll cross that bridge if you have to come to it. But
yeah, exactly. At least both teams would make it, right?
Yeah. So hopefully not quite before that too much. Well, an unbelievable run that UCLA has been on right now, and they're up to 18-11 overall, and it's really crazy that they are now tied for first in the Pac-12. And
that's just nuts.
And just to like another underlying side story is what's key in the Pac-12 as far as the Pac-12 tournament is concerned. These next couple of games are huge because you want to get one of those top 4 seeds so you're able to get the bye. And you want to have to play, maybe one less game and you're able to get through to where you put yourself with a real opportunity to win this tournament.
Yeah, exactly. If you can get a bye, that puts you right there, to where you got a chance. If you got to play, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's just too tough. So those first 4 games, the first 4 byes, it doesn't matter if you get the 1 or the 4 to me. Although I guess the 1 you're playing the 8 in theory, so you're supposed to have a little bit easier game. But I mean, 6, 7, and 8 is going to be somewhere, maybe a Stanford who beat the crap out of us. So you're not going to get an easy game, But yeah, you want to get one of them first 4, and I think now with this, if we can take care of business Saturday against Arizona, depleted Arizona too, because Green's not playing. On your home floor, you got to keep that momentum going. Then I think the worst we could do is the 3rd seed, even if we lost to Southern Cal. So, I got to go back and map those numbers out, but I think that's what it was, is you could only drop to the 3 seed there. So this game's monster. It's just absolutely monster to give Arizona another loss to and knock them down.
And they come off of a game where they played really, really bad. I mean, USC was like trying to let them back in the game and give them the game. They were shooting in the 20% in the first half. Arizona was just turning the ball over left and right. They looked ugly. So in these weird weekend Pac-12, we've talked about last week, you never know. Like, is the team that played poorly going to come back now, and is Arizona going to say, okay, now we really have to split here? Or are they just struggling, and is it going to be easy for UCLA to kind of pick the bones of maybe a wounded animal right now? You just never know. In these Pac-12 weekends, they're really, really tough sometimes.
Yeah, and Arizona's got problems just because their best 3 players are freshmen, and they're all got NBA aspirations. Now Green's hurt. And sometimes with freshmen that are looking towards that draft at the end of February, they can get distracted. They start to struggle. They're wondering, okay, are we really going to be able to make a run here? Are they completely bought in? Are they starting to figure out, well, I'm going to go here in the draft? It's all about draft status. So it's a tough job. And I think Coach Miller's done a great job keeping them together. But, when the struggles hit, are they going to fall apart, or are they going to be able to right the ship on Saturday? Because this is a huge game for them, too, like you said. I mean, because the thing all year with Arizona is if you can score against them, they have trouble scoring a lot of points. They want to keep the game in the 60-65 area. And if you come out and hit shots, you can get away from them. I mean, heck, they get 48 or something against you guys. I mean, it's a struggle for them to get points. And especially with Green being out, their 3-point percentage is dropping every game.
Yeah, so we all laugh and we joke about it, but it does feel like the Dukies this year are struggle down the stretch, and I don't think they're a 2 seed. But you know what's going to happen come Selection Sunday. They're likely going to be rewarded again. I mean, we still obviously have a couple games for them to play and then their conference tournament. But Duke struggles again, Dan. Like, how good is this Duke team this year? Do they deserve to be on the 2 line?
I don't think they do. I think they've got some really, really bad losses. And if their name wasn't Duke, I think you'd be looking at a 6 or 7 seed. I think they're horribly overrated. Yes, they got Jones, who's a good, solid player. Yes, Carey's a good, solid player, but they don't have any sure shot NBA Tatums, Williamsons, Barretts. They just don't have any. Those guys are good players. They're not great players. They're not superstars. And, that's why they lost to Clemson. That's why they lost to Stephen F. Austin. That's why they get beat 25 points to NC State. I mean, they're just not that good. Florida State's the best team in the ACC, in my opinion.
And Duke has got they're going to have to play against a Virginia team that has underachieved this year, but they still have to go and play at Virginia. And then they're going to have to play against an NC State team, whether it be at home, that just beat the crap out of them. So not necessarily the easiest down the stretch. And then you end with your rival, North Carolina, before the conference tournament. So, yeah, we're kind of focusing in and talking a lot because, honestly, the most exciting conference right now is the Pac-12, and so much can happen over these last few games. So I'm loving being able to talk to you and break down this UCLA team because they're a lot of fun, and it makes it a lot more fun that my team is right in the mix too with a shot to get in there too. It just kind of keeps you interested all the way through. There's nothing worse than a college basketball season when the team that you root for is just bad and they have no shot of making the tournament or even maybe getting lucky and making a run in the conference tournament. It just kind of takes you a little part of you out of the season, and for you, it's just really fun because you have 2 teams that weren't supposed to be very good. And those are kind of, as a fan, you're rooting for Cincinnati and UCLA. Those are some of the most fun teams to root for when they really overachieve and they surprise you a little bit.
Yeah, I never dreamed I'd be rooting for anything except try to get a little bit better by the end of the year. And hopefully next year we can have a good year. I mean, this never, ever came into my mind at any point. Even when we went out there and we beat Utah at home and then upset Colorado at home, I said, well, okay, at least they're winning a couple home games and, turning the corner a little bit and keeping the Wolves away for a little while. But I had never dreamed that they could do this. And it's all, I mean, the players are just playing. I mean, they are actually really all stepping up and playing, and they shorten the rotation a little bit, and everything's working right now. So it was funny when I was out there in November. I said to him a couple things when we were talking. I said, you got to quit playing big, and you got to get Kyman on the floor somehow. And it was funny because every time Kyman scores, he'll text me and go, well, your guy had another good game.
Your boy, yeah. Oh, that's great.
Well, that's just the way it is. And your old horse racing brother is not too stupid.
Yeah, so just a really, really phenomenal. No matter what happens these next couple of weeks, even if UCLA loses 3 games in a row, even if UCLA wins 5 or 6 games in a row and wins the Pac-12 and wins the Pac-12 tournament and goes on, no matter what happens to end this year, this has just been an incredible job coaching, and you can tell that he has inspired the fan base. And because like anything, it was for UCLA and for Mick, it wasn't like an immediate, this is the guy, this Mick's going to come there immediately. And so sometimes when it's like, when that relationship isn't 100%, it takes the fans a little while. It takes some of the players a little while to go, is this the guy? And I mean, all of my friends that are UCLA fans, anybody that I see that roots for UCLA, I think about, 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, they all said, you know what? This is the guy, Mick. This is the guy that we should have got. So I think I'm sure you're very proud, and I'm sure he's very excited about how everyone's been playing. But you know what? I think I know Mick, even though I don't know him, and I'm sure he would be saying, hey, I don't want any praise right now. We still got plenty of work to do.
Yeah, exactly. He just texted me actually while we were doing this call. He was like, we had him all the way, didn't we?
Yeah. Yep.
Because he knows how I am. He knows I'm sitting on that couch jumping up and down. He used to call me. You remember the movie Hoosiers?
Oh yeah.
He used to call me Shooter. Because he said I got the crazy brother jumping up and down on the hospital bed listening to the game. I was like,
that's funny.
That's exactly the only difference is I used to listen to him at Murray State, and now I get to watch him at least when I'm jumping up and down on the couch instead of having to listen over the internet. So yeah, it's been crazy, and being a basketball guy too, like you are, I love just watching the adjustments during the game that the normal fan doesn't see. The different isolation plays, the different things both coaches are trying to do to get their. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible how some coaches really make a ton of adjustments, and other coaches just kind of throw the balls out and say, I hope I got the best team, and think recruiting's going to do it all, like down in Memphis, and then you end up, with 16 and 12 seasons, and you got lottery picks and you don't win anything, and that's a problem where. I think Southern Cal's in a great spot with Andy, and I think Mick's going to do a good job. The Pac-12, with this influx of new coaches the last 4 or 5 years, it's not surprising that the conference is getting better.
Yep.
And now it's really, really good. And I could argue with anybody, other than the Big Ten, maybe the Pac-12 is as good as everybody else.
Yep. Because they're the middle part of the conference is very good. There's just no bottom. Like even a team like Washington was supposed to be the best team. They've got a couple guys that are going to be pros, that are going to be like high level picks, and they struggle, and they've just kind of had one of those miserable seasons where everything seems to go wrong. But there's just no down games. You go on the road, you play a team like Utah, they're tough, and the first thing I was thinking last night down the end of that game when they came up and hit the shot, I was like, I wonder that's like you said, did Dan just fall off the couch right now? Or what? That's the first thing I went and tweeted. I was like, how's the fat bald guy doing right now? Because I was laughing. You know what? I got to say, I've never been one, because USC and UCLA are big rivals. And I've never been one that's like always just roots against UCLA. In fact, I kind of go the opposite way. I want them to be good. And USC beat them because then it's just better for everyone and it's more fun to beat a good team, and so I find myself definitely rooting a little bit more for them to be good this year since Mick is over there for you, because I know it's fun for you, and I know you guys love basketball, and Mick's a good guy and he does a great job, so I caught myself giving a little fist pump after UCLA hit that. I was like, what am I doing here? Oh my gosh. I hope my dad didn't see me fist pumping for the Bruins. So
it's funny. I got 10 texts right after the game. And remember now on the East Coast, it's 1:30, almost 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's horse racing guys from New York, horse racing guys from Florida, that it's unbelievable. I mean, guys said I set my alarm for 2 a.m. to wake up to see who won the game. Like, who would do that?
I know.
And it's like, because they know Mick owns horses. They know that he has a love for horse racing. They know me, and they're, it's fun to root. So, it gives everybody another team to root for. I even got a Syracuse fan up there rooting for us like crazy.
That's great. All over the place. So we were joking on Twitter the other day about hashtag FBG Mobile is going to be FBG Global with the Saudi Arabia races and some big races coming in. Let's just briefly touch on this because these races, just from a handicapping and gambling standpoint, it's going to be kind of hard, watching them for the first time. This is more of to me at least, I'm just going to watch an event. Okay, I want to see how things go. I'm curious to how some of our big horses that are heading over there are going to run. And you know what? When you put big money on the line, Dan, this is a race now where the winner of the race is going to be getting a $10 million prize. It's a $20 million race, but a $10 million prize to the winner. And we got a good group. Is good of a group that we could send of some of our older horses from the U.S. with McKinsey, Midnight Bisou, Mucho Gusto, Maximum Security, and Tacitus. This is a good group. You're going to catch some really good European horses, some really good international horses that we've seen show up here. Just from like a who's who, this is a fun thing to see, and hopefully this will be the start of, we have a couple of big races in a row now with the Pegasus, with the Saudi Cup, and then with the Dubai World Cup. So what I like about this, just from a horse racing fan standpoint, is it feels like this might be able to keep some of these good horses around a little longer. Instead of retiring right after the Breeders' Cup, some of them are going to say, you know what, maybe I'll hang around and run in maybe 2 of those 3 big races, or even just 1 of those 3 big races. So I think it's cool that we see some of these big stars going over there. It's a good field.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, horse racing over the last 4 to 5 years for sure has evolved more into bigger day events, bigger weekend events. And then other than that, it's just, the Wednesday to Sunday players are gone. That's why most tracks are going to Thursday, Sunday, or Friday, Sunday. And that's because it's just a time thing. I think it's a smart thing to do. People would rather go and see 12 races or 14 races on a Saturday than see 8 races Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I just think that's just the way it's going. And, we need our stars to be there. A horse like Maximum Security, we need him. It's like you said with UCLA, you want them to be good. Well, we need Maximum Security to be good.
Yes.
We need Mucho Gusto to have a great year. We need, horses like this to stick around. When Kofefe retired the other day, I cringed.
Yeah.
Not because there was anything wrong with her or anything. It was just, no, we needed our superstar to be here. We needed her to be at Keeneland. We needed her to be there. And it really hurts horse racing when those horses retire. And hey, I know it's not my money, but I've been screaming for 20 years they ought to put in a rule that you can't breed until you turn 5. And I think it would stop a lot of this, because if the horse isn't making any money sitting in there eating hay, those owners would run them.
They're going to run. Sure.
They would run them.
Especially when they're healthy, when they're healthy. It's like there's just too many horses that already are planned. They have their post-racing plans while they still have 2 or 3 races left, and I don't like that a lot of the time. I just run them, keep running them when they feel like they're done. Then you send them. But like you said, it's just we're like racing to breed. It's instead of breeding to race, it's kind of become really really bass backwards is what some people say. And
it's completely backwards. I mean, how much better is the Breeders' Cup if American Pharoah comes back to defend his title?
Yeah,
and I understand it's money. It's hard to do, but you would think there's got to be some kind of insurance policy, something they could do to get these horses to run back as 4-year-olds. And I think the Saudi Cup's a gigantic, great idea. I wish they'd put in a really big race on Derby weekend for older horses. The Ali Sheba's nice, but if that purse was triple that, it would be a lot nicer. And then roll right into the Stephen F. Foster after that. And
you got the Met Mile now, which has been bigger purse. People kind of will point to that sometimes too. So yeah, you're right. If it's hey, doubling some of these purses to keep some of these horses around, you know what? When you're thinking about if it's worth it or not, I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is. And when we talk about this race, I mean, this is a great race. I mean, to me, it's Maximum Security's race to lose.
Yep.
Just because of the speed, he's going to dictate this race. He's going to go right to the front, and maybe he won't be able to get home because several of his wins turning for home, you thought he was going to get beat, and he just kept going. In the Haskell, he looked dead beat. In the Bold Ruler, he looked like, well, he's probably going to stop. In the Cigar Mile, he just ran away from spun to run, which was shocking after the way that horse ran in the Breeders' Cup. But I think he's going to lead to the top of the stretch, and I think Mucho Gusto and Ben Battle have big chances. I think trying to find this other foreign horse, the undefeated horse from Japan. I mean, I can't even pronounce the name. Chisobel, I guess. I don't. He's 10-1, but he's undefeated from Japan. I mean, we don't know how good that horse is. I mean, but those Japan dirt horses are usually pretty good. So I think that horse at a big price has a chance. But if I was betting trifectas, and I know the takeout's high, so a lot of people aren't, but if I was betting trifectas, I'd have Maximum Security on top. The only horse I would play to upset would be Mucho Gusto.
Yep.
And then I'd put the rest of them second and third. There's probably 6 or 7 of them with a chance. The one long shot I would use for sure in the try would be Gold Dream, the other Japanese horse that ran right behind the undefeated horse. Could pick up a third spot or something. I'm not a big Tactus guy. I guess he could hit the board. Midnight Bazoo, let's talk about her for a second. I mean, she's an incredible mare, but I don't think she's in this class. I mean, I may be wrong.
I'm a little concerned. I loved her last year. I mean, she was awesome last year. She was, one of the best horses in training, but I just don't know. Like, I feel like she could beat, if it was a field where she had to maybe just beat a Maximum Security or a McKinsey or a Mucho Gusto, but I don't know if she could beat all of them. I don't know if
that's exactly right.
I feel like 3 or 4 of them would have to all kind of show up with like a C level performance. And like, if it was like a one-on-one instance, sure, she could be better than one of them that day, or maybe even 2 of them. But this field, like you said, it's a deep field, and I don't know if she's going to be able to be that good.
Yeah, exactly. And because she's going to have to pass them all too.
Yep.
All 3 of them horses are going to be in front of her.
Yep.
So, I mean, she's going to be good enough to run by all 3 of them. I mean, McKenzie is one of the best milers we've seen, probably since Frosted. Can he do the mile and 1/8? Yeah, he can, but he likes to hang in the stretch. I think Mucho Gusto is the better Baffert right now, and
he's
I could be wrong.
No, he's the play, yeah. and because Baffert is really high on him, and he doesn't. He's he talks about his good horses and stuff, but he has had so many good horses. You don't like he does keep it pretty close to the vest. He's not one of the ones that's like, this is the best horse I ever trained over and over. And he repeatedly has been saying something's changed with Mucho Gusto. He said like right around the Pegasus race, he's like, man, this light bulb just went on for this horse, and he's taken himself to the next level. And he wouldn't be sending this horse there unless he had a big shot, because he, more than anyone with McKinsey, who you mentioned, McKinsey's a really good like measuring stick horse. And if Baffert didn't think that Mucho Gusto could compete with McKinsey at the very least, he wouldn't be sending him there. So I think, to me, the play is Mucho Gusto. Just the way he's coming into this race, I feel like you might be able to get a little bit of value on him, and I just love everything Baffert's saying about him. So it feels like we're kind of on the same horse. It's like Maximum Security is going to dictate. We'll see the way that racetrack's playing. You never know with a speed horse. Sometimes a racetrack could be really deep and tiring, and they just have no shot on a track like that. But he's a good animal, Maximum Security, and I think we kind of, when you talk about him, you always have to talk about the Derby DQ, but it's one of those things where whatever happened in that race, he ran damn good, and every time he's on the racetrack, he just shows up and he gives it his all.
Yeah, and there's so many factors that went into that DQ too. And again, the people at Churchill got mad at me because I said, well, the people at Churchill caused this because if they would have just moved the race up 45 minutes,
you're right,
for the safety of the horse, they saw the radar, they knew the downpour was coming, they could have moved every race up 10 minutes, ran that Derby at 5:45. It'd have been on a dry track, and half that gook wouldn't have been flying back at him, and probably none of this would have ever even happened. But the excuse I got was, well, TV. I said, well, Tiger Woods was leading the Masters, and they moved the television. They told the TV, yep, rain's coming, we're moving.
Yep.
If you can move the Masters with Tiger Woods leading in the final round, I think you can move a race an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we see them do it the other way all the time, right? They drag the races an hour late all the time. They can move it up once or twice, especially when it's for the safety of the horses. So, yeah, it will be interesting. I mean, all eyes will be kind of on Saudi Arabia in this big race on Saturday morning, as we all will see how it unfolds for the first time. And Dan, going to be a big.
I want to hear who you like at Gulfstream too.
Oh, okay.
I know you're going to be covering that for your fans, but I've got 2 possible singles in a late pick 5.
Let's hear it.
Who do you like in the late? I think Zulu Alpha is a possible single, and I think the filly of Pletcher's is the other possible single. Now that horse is going to be 3 to 5. Was it Spice to run or something like that? Spice is nice. Yeah, I mean, she could be any kind.
Of the three in there that I think are really, really talented, Spice is Nice, Bayerness, and Tonal is Shape. I think Spice is Nice has by far the biggest upside. I think if you're looking for a horse to single, it would be that one. And I definitely prefer Spice is Nice to Tonal is Shape. I give a little shot to Bayerness too. Like I'm gonna probably. Yeah. I think the two of them, like Spice is Nice, Bayerness, I prefer more than I prefer Tonal is Shape. So I absolutely am with you on, like, of the short prices in there, I much prefer Spice is Nice. And what's crazy about Zula Alpha is I think you're right. Like, he's become a must-use now. And in a group that in the last, like, year and a half, like this group of these horses on the grass, these older on the grass that go long, they always just take turns beating each other, and they've been like waiting for somebody to jump up and kind of take a grab and a hold of the division and say, like, I'm the man here. And I think Zulu Alpha is trending that way. That was a big win.
And what's funny is before that race, now that horse was like 15-1 on the morning line first time out this year. I have never, and I'm including all the Baffords, I've never had more phone calls from guys from Kentucky and around the Mike Maker barn call me about a horse than I did the day before Zulu Alpha came back. And every single one of them, man, Zulu Alpha's coming out of his skin. I'm telling you now, ignore the price. This horse is going to win. This horse is going to be a champion this year. This horse is getting so good. And I'm like, man, how many people can call me? Yeah. I'm like, this is crazy. It's like, what, he tell everybody in the barn, he tell them to call me? Hey, trying to get 2-1 instead of 15-1. What did he call me for? You know, it was crazy. And then, of course, he ran out of his skin, and actually, he didn't even get a good trip.
No,
I mean, he cut the corner. He had to sift through a hole and shoot up the rail. And, you know, they don't usually win coming up the rail like that. Usually you come down the middle of the track on the turf. So, I mean, he exploded in the lane. And I think there's only two horses in there that can beat him. And that's, you know, the horse everybody always likes, Sadler's Joy, and then Thread of Blue going wire to wire. I mean,
that's exactly the three that I you know what, that's fine if you're looking at the late pick 5 and you're looking at it like, you know what, this might be a 4 and full race. Sometimes you don't have to get too cute. You can look for a price or two in some of the other spots. Those are the three that I had. I think, you know, if it's a Thread of Blue loose on the lead and otherwise it looks like Sadler's Joy, but if that's going to be the case and you're looking at these horses going, okay, there's only going to be the three of them, they might all be kind of like shortish prices, not huge prices. Sometimes you're just better off singling Zulu Alpha and giving yourself the coverage all the way around it, you know?
When I love doing the double single, and what I do is I flip-flop them. So I'll single the Spice horse and then take those three. Yep. And then I'll come back and I'll take the three of them that we talked about in the Philly race and then single Zulu Alpha.
Sure, absolutely.
So
I do the same thing all the time.
I got a dollar one if they both win. And if one of them gets beat, sometimes you're happy that one of them got beat because you get to
play double. Yeah.
Yeah, you get the 4-1 instead of the 3-5. You're like, oh, why not? And in the Fountain of Youth, I don't think you need that many horses. Now, I know Dennis Moment had a bad work, and I know there's some iffiness about that horse. And I know the other competition drew the parking lot, Chance It. But I think other than that, other than those two, the only other horse I'm using is Candy Tycoon on the fence. I just know since day one they've loved this horse. And they've bet him and bet him and bet him. And maybe he just took 4 or 5 races to figure it out.
He was big.
Well, yeah, and the speed is all in the 9, 10, 11, 12 holes, right? So he's on the rail. He's got a bunch of plotters to his outside. If Franco just breaks him and gets him to that first turn, he doesn't have to be in front. But if he is in front at 15 or 20-1, you're going to pray you had him in the pick 4 and pick 5, you know, because chance it might end up in the parking lot. And Dennis Moment, there's just so many questions about him with that last work. I mean, and the thing about his last work is that horse that outworked him was 10-1 morning line on the grass the other day at Gulfstream. They bet him to 2-1, and he ran out of the money.
Yeah.
So that's scary.
And there's, I think this is a race where you mentioned Candy Tycoon's going to be in all of my exotics. I'm going to use,
is there anybody else we can use in the pick 5 to try to upset these two? I mean,
the only horse that I want it, and I want to make a case for it, and I'm going to use him underneath. But what I don't like is that the only reason why he's running in this race, I found out, is because a first level allowance didn't fill, and that was Country Grammar, who I think I think as a price, he's kind of an up and coming horse, and I don't think he's maybe I don't know if. I would like another race from him. I just don't. I think this is going to be a little bit too much to deal with a couple really good horses not having raced in a month, not having raced in a couple months and stepping up a little bit. But I do think he's got a shot in there. But I'm with you. I thought you got to start with Dennis's moment, and that kind of how do you like him? How do you not? How are you going to use him in this race? The one Candy Tycoon could really dictate things, and then what are you going to do with Chance It to the outside? And that's kind of how you approach this race because Chance It's good, but if he gets parked, and he's going to have to work, and Ete Indian right to his inside is going to be kind of pushing him wide. Shotsky won't be too far out of it, so he's going to try to hook him wide too, and maybe Candy Tycoon is able to steal it down to the inside, or it works out that Dennis's moment gets a nice trip right in behind all the speed.
Right, and for pick 5 players, you're 3 times 1 times 3, right? In the 3 races we talked about, or 1 times 3 times 3, you can go so deep in them other 2 races that are really, really tough. That if you stab a 15 or 20 to 1 with your 4, 5, 6 horses you can use and still stay with a decent budget, I mean, this thing could pay. And I can't tell you how many pick 4s, pick 5s I've hit over the years with an even money or a 2 to 1 that paid $20,000, paid $40,000. So people that say, well, you can't win like that, they're nuts.
You can.
You absolutely can, because all you got to do is hit that one illogical horse that the normal smaller player that's 3 by 3 by 3 by 3 because they don't know how to bet. They're all 3 by 3 by 3 by 4 by 3. And you get to that 5th or 6th horse that's so hard to get, whether he's 15 to 1 or 30 to 1, you'll know by the multis if this horse is playing big. And if he plays big, can you imagine catching a 15 or 20 to 1 and then having the Pletcher horse alive in the last leg? I mean, it'll be 5 to 7 times higher than Chance It and Dennis Moment.
Dan Cronin, Fat Bald Guy Racing, Keeneland Dan, we appreciate it. And next week we'll have to talk with you either before or after we have that big rivalry game with the USC UCLA. And Dan, thanks a lot. Let the folks know out there, how can we find you online, and where can we find Fat Bald Guy Racing?
Absolutely. You can find me every day, Keeneland Dan at Fat Bald Guy Racing on Twitter. But the website is fatbaldguyracing.com or FBG Mobile. And we've got 7-8 tracks the next couple of days, so it's going to be fun.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I appreciate it. Good luck to the Bruins this weekend. Good luck in all of your wagers, and we'll be talking to you again soon.
Thank you. Talk soon. See you, Gino.
Keeneland Dan, we're both excited with our teams, hopefully getting right into this NCAA tournament. Let's take a quick break here on That's What G Said. We'll be right back. Hey, big thank you to our good buddy Dan there. We'll be talking to him a couple more times as we get closer and closer to the NCAA tournament. Conference tournament's coming up soon, and he's on cloud 9 with how well his brother is doing there at UCLA. Let's move from one interview to the next. We'll go to the Pick 6 King, Jon Stettin. We give a little background on Jon, how he got into racing. We talk about his website, Past the Wire, and then we go through races 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 from Gulfstream Park on Saturday, which concludes with the Fountain of Youth. So that will be our discussion there. We spend about almost an hour talking racing. So hope you enjoy this interview with Jon Stettin, the Pick 6 King. We'll get to this interview after a word from one of our sponsors. Just wanted to remind you about one of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast, Sarah Candle Company. Visit sarahcandles.com, CERA candles.com. Use the promo code GINO for 10% off of your entire purchase. These are all natural soy wax candles. They burn longer. They are better for you than the candles out there that have that traditional paraffin wax. I know the people from this company personally. I've grown up with them my whole life. They love candles, and the goal was to have an affordable candle that everyone can enjoy. Use that promo code GINO. My favorite is Fresh Roses. The Fresh Roses scent is awesome. If you're a horse racing fan, they got Del Mar in there. You ever want to know what Del Mar smells like, but you couldn't make it out there? Order your candle right now from Sarah Candle Company. The website, CERAcandles.com. SarahCandles.com. Promo code GINO for 10% off your purchase. This is a fun show for me because we have a little bit of an Elite Racing Network reunion. First, we had Keeneland Dan, Fat Bald Guy Racing. We talked a little college with him. A little bit about the big race at Saudi Arabia. He gave us a couple thoughts at Gulfstream Park. And now we get to talk to the Pick Six King, friend of mine, one of the best handicappers out there that you'll find, and a great follow on social media, a great writer over at Past the Wire. Very happy to having him join us on That's What G Said podcast. The Pick Six King, Jon Stettin. Jon, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Gino. I appreciate the kind words, but I got to say, I may have to lose the Pick Six King moniker because the Pick Six really is a thing of the past now. With
jackpots, man. Oh, gosh. It's just...
I bet 2 or 3 pick sixes a year now. You know?
Yeah, it's just not the same. It's not like the days where you could take a shot and have a legitimate chance to sweep the pool on like a non-carryover day for 30, 40, 50 grand, $100 grand. You just it's just a bummer now with the way things go. And what I love is that right off the bat we started talking about an issue. That's one of my favorite things about Past the Wire, Jon, is that in a day and age when horse racing is kind of our bubble of horse racing is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. A lot of people in a lot of places are worried about being critical or being a little bit negative sometimes if they don't like the way things are. That's what I love about Past the Wire. When there's something critical out there that deserves to be critiqued, you or some of the writers that you guys have there are going to critique it. If there's something that's worthy of being praised, you or some of the writers that you have around there, they're going to praise it. You just don't see that kind of like honest, real coverage in horse racing. And I think it's very refreshing what you guys do over at Past the Wire.
Well, I appreciate that. And I do try and keep things real and in perspective on both sides of the fence. When there's positive stuff, I love to talk about it. And I actually, every column I go into, I kind of look for something positive to write about. And in all honesty, some weeks it's just not there, and I can't help that,
Is that the Drago? Who's that in the back saying hello?
Let me have him quiet.
No problem. I got the 3 over here. They always want to check in. You might hear Milo crying in the background also. So sometimes they get bored. They want to be a part of the show. That's what it is.
Yeah, Rocco hears things that nobody hears and sees things that nobody sees. So, I get that from him at like 3 a.m. Everybody's like sound asleep, and all of a sudden Rocco is going crazy. And I'm looking at the outdoor security cameras trying to figure out what he's barking at. There's nothing there,
So, well, let's talk a little bit about how Past the Wire kind of came to fruition, and let's give us a little bit about your background. You're someone who's been around the racetrack basically your whole life. Tell us about it, and how'd you get into racing, and how'd you get into gambling?
Well, it is a little bit of an interesting story, and how Past the Wire, ties in is also interesting, because I never dreamed I'd be writing about racing and have a website, dedicated to that. But my dad was a mutual clerk for the New York Racing Association. So he worked at Aqueduct, Belmont, and Saratoga. They moved around. So ever since I was born, I spent every summer at Saratoga. Saratoga was a vacation for my mom and I, and even for my dad to an extent, but he worked up there behind the windows. But every night after the races, we'd go out to dinner. We'd be hanging out in Saratoga. Every day I would go to the racetrack. I mean, from the time I was in a stroller until the time I was running around with Angel Cordero's son, Tommy, and Eddie Belmonte's son, Eddie. And, those guys were leading riders, and Angel's daughter, Merle. We were all friends and running around the racetrack. While my dad was working behind the windows, their dads were riding races. And I just, grew up around it and, spent some time working on the backside. Around it my entire life. And, a lot of families would read the newspaper in the mornings. My mom and dad were reading what was back then called the Telly or the Telegraph, prior to the racing form. So I learned, past performances were one of the first things I learned how to read. I was 6 or 7 years old, and I was, already looking at, the entries and the odds and the trainers and the riders and stuff like that. And, my mom really wasn't a handicapper. She would look at the program and she would form opinions and bet, but I'd be sitting with her and she'd say, I love What a Pleasure horses in the slop. You know what I mean? I was 7 years old, so I was like picking up stuff like that. Racing horses, they're great first time out. And these things when you're a kid, they stick with you.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
by the time I would say I was 10, I was having opinions. Okay. And also I would say around that time, if my mom or my dad would bet and win, of course they would give me some money. So I learned at a very early age that, hey, if you pick the right horse, you can get money. And if I pick the right horse, you get money. So I started betting very young. It was something that really wasn't frowned upon in my household.
No, not with me either. No. I mean, exactly the same.
But you understand. I mean, it was just a common, it was part of our life. You know what I mean? There was no stigma attached to it. It was really part of our life. And
my mom and dad met each other at the track. And so like that was she sold the digest in front, and my dad was just like us, he was a gambler, and he had a job where he is a general contractor, so it's nice for him, he can make his own schedule, which means you get there at 5 or 6 and you can be ready to go to first post at Santa Anita by 12:31. So
interesting because my mom and dad also met at the racetrack. And my mom was at Belmont Park the day before I was born, and was at Belmont Park with me in a stroller 2 or 3 days after I was.
I think you got me beat there. I think we were about a couple weeks to where I have my first one at Santa Anita, where I'm sitting there, and it's funny, kind of similar to what you said. In one of the first pictures that I have at the racetrack, I'm looking at the racing form, that my dad's got, and you can tell my eyes are like kind of fixated on it, and it's one of those things, John, where you definitely. It doesn't work this way for everyone, but most people that we talk to, or most people that are in the industry, you catch the bug at an early age, and you can kind of tell early that whether this is going to be something you do for a living, or this is something that is one of your major hobbies that you put a lot of your time and effort into. This is something that's going to be part of my life for a long time.
Yeah, no, it's been a focal part and a central part of my life, all the way so far, and I really don't see that changing. I will say, I've been a professional bettor for a long time. It was really all I did to make a living for many years, and it was very difficult. It's not really that way for me anymore. I still play the horses all the time, but I don't play nearly as much as I used to. And that's by design and by choice, because the game has changed and evolved so much. 15 years ago, I was making a living playing the horses. I'm very glad that I don't have to do that today, because I think it's always been extremely difficult. So I don't mean to imply or suggest that it at any point was not, but I think it's nearly impossible today without the assistance of some rebates or something like that, because the game has changed so much. I mean, you're playing now not only against everybody else in the pool, you're playing against syndicates, you're playing against high takeouts, and you're playing against, just so much information out there and so many people out there. It's just really, really difficult, let alone, drugs, illegal and legal both.
Super barns, super trainers. Yeah.
Used to be, I'll give you an example. Used to be years ago, you could look at the sheets, Ragozins or Thoroughgraph, and, a horse might stand out as being just heads and tails faster than everybody else, and he could be 10 or 15 to 1. That rarely happens now, and when they do, they're 3 to 5, and everybody knows it. But rarely do you even see those kind of standouts now, because the playing field has been leveled through so many different channels that it makes it much more difficult to isolate certain horses. I mean, not to spend too much time on the sheets, but now to me the sheets are a tool where I could maybe eliminate 2 or 3 horses from a race.
Play against, yeah.
As opposed to finding one that stands out. Maybe I could find 2 or 3 that are just flat out too slow to win. And I can eliminate them from all wagers. But other than that, it's just a very, very, tough environment, and you're really, really up against it. And, I understand why racetracks allow syndicates to bet into their pools and have, last second access to, making wagers with the press of a button. But, I understand why they do it, but it's a tremendous disadvantage for anybody who's not doing it.
Yes.
So
It's hard, and it's hard to explain some of the things to, like, if you're bringing one of your friends, John, to the track that doesn't know racing very well, and you're explaining things to them, it's hard to explain to someone why when a horse is going into the gate that we just bet at 8-1, and then they go off at 7-2 or something like that, and they're kind of scratching their head like, well, they go off at that price, and then it's funny, it's like, immediately when the gates open, they open up 2 lengths, and then their price jumps down. And I know, and I don't, like, I'm not conspiracy theorying and things and that, but it's one of those things where it's like the live horse breaks, and then all the money's coming through late, and it's just tough to explain to someone like what's happened, and that's what's hard when we I love introducing new people. It's something that I've done my whole life, bringing friends to the track, showing them how to bet, teaching them, how to play the races, or what's a good wager, what's a bad wager, things like that. There are some things, like you said, that's made it very difficult to make a living on, and it's made it difficult to kind of like bring someone in and want to introduce them to a world that sometimes we're kind of scratching our head going like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, no, it really is. And, there's always, I joke with people, especially in the sequence we're going to discuss today at Gulfstream. I always say, the Gulfstream late pick 5 on these big stake days like Pegasus Day and whatnot, there's always one race where one horse you just can't logically get to wins.
Yep.
And it's just, one of those uncanny things. I mean, on Pegasus Day, it was a spooky channel. I couldn't get to him no matter what you did. Some people liked them. I don't know how. I don't know why. They explained it. I know Ellis Starr, the Uber capper, liked them and was high on them. I couldn't see it. And there'll be a horse on tomorrow in all likelihood that falls into that category. I mean, Gulfstream is for some reason notorious for that. It's just one of those little idiosyncrasies that I observed there. Similar to what you said about, odds, changing. It seems to happen a lot there. And it does seem to somehow, and again, not to be a conspiracy theorist myself, but it does somehow tie into the trips, it looks like.
You're right. Like the one that breaks on the lead is always the one that gets cut.
Right, exactly. The horse gets clear on the lead when there's a ton of speed. All of a sudden he goes, 9-5 to 7-5, or 6-5. Or the favorite's in all kinds of trouble at 6-5, and you can see he's not going to. He clicks up to 5-2.
Yeah, it's like, oh really? Yeah, that was yeah. But
it's uncanny, but it happens.
And we'll do our best on these big days because, like, I think I fit very similar to the approach that you just kind of mapped out. Is that I'm not playing as much on a day-to-day basis anymore. I'm trying to do a better job of picking and choosing my spots, and maybe it's going to be on a big carryover day here or there, or maybe it's going to be on like some of these big days like Saturday where you feel like, okay, there's a little more money in the pool, so maybe these horses aren't going to get hit as hard, or maybe I can it can chalk out and still pay a little bit better than normal. You just feel like you have a little bit more of an opportunity to get some value. So an unbelievable card.
100%. I agree. I have the exact same approach. I like to play the big days and the big races because the pools are bigger. I feel that, someone who's a real true handicapper like I am, who, looks at a lot of past performances and a lot of replays, I think in the stake races where, 90% of everybody is all in and really trying to win and really, trying to get over there at their best, I think on a level playing field like that, I have an edge over a lot of players because I put in the homework, I put in the time, and, it can come together for me better on those days than on, say, a Wednesday afternoon when you got, 12 horse maiden 12 fields running, you know what I mean, which are just, tough to decipher, and all kinds of things can happen. And, you don't know who's giving a race, who's using a race to get fit, who's this, who's that. I mean, there are just so many factors that, make an already difficult game even more difficult. So I agree. I like the big days. I like to go after them. I like the pool sizes. And I think, you have a better shot on those days, or at least I feel like I do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's funny to say that, but it's like it feels like on a harder day, even if you lose, you just feel better going in, right? Because it's like I want it to be a little bit harder because that's where we get our separation. That's where we make our money.
100%.
You and I aren't trying to just turn $1 into $1.20. We're kind of trying to wait and pick our spots and then make a big score, like you've done many times with the pick sixes. So this is one of those days where you can take that approach, and we have a really nice like late pick 5 sequence or last 5 races that are kind of big stakes races we'll start talking about, and we'll talk about the 10th race. So like all of these you can play in, either the pick 6 or the late or pick 4, different wagers throughout the day. Let's start with the Devona Dale. And I mean, 2 years ago, would anybody know Safi Joseph Jr. and now becomes one of the absolute best trainers out there? I mean, when your name is up there with Pletcher and Brown, and you're beating like Navarro down there at Gulfstream Park with some of his big horses, that's quite a feat. And this barn has really jumped onto the scene in the last few years. They have a horse like this, Tonalist Shape, who's going for her 4th consecutive. She just won one of the local preps in the Forward Gal, and she'll take a lot of money. Spice is Nice is going to take a lot of money in here, who won by 12 for Pletcher. Bayerness was very impressive in both of her starts. Where do you go in this 10th race?
Well, I'll tell you, Safi Joseph has been on my radar for a while. Even when he was, unknown, I had noticed something about him that caught my eye. He has always, since he's been in Florida, which is, I'd say maybe 8, 10 years now, whatever, 7 years, I'm not exactly sure, but he's been here a little bit while. And he was under the radar for a while. But 2 things actually brought my attention to him. One is Ramiro Restrepo, who works for Fasek Tipton and is a very, very sharp guy, was steering horses to him and had a couple of horses with him early on. And I knew that he would not give horses to somebody who was not very sharp. And that kind of put him on my radar screen. And what I noticed about him was he's had a very high win percentage off the claim. And I'm talking 35, 40%, even a couple of years he was 42 or 43% off the claim. I think at this Gulfstream meet he's over 40% off the claim. And that was indicative to me that this guy knows what he's doing with a racehorse. He knows what to look for, and he's improving horses and scoping out good horses. And now that he's gotten better stock, it's really come full circle for him. And he's, I think he's got 70 horses or something like that at Gulfstream, and he's got a couple on the Derby Trail. He's got, a couple on the Oaks Trail, and he's, he's only 30 years old or thereabouts, and he's an up and coming guy for sure. And that's where I land in this race. I'm hoping that Spice is Nice goes off a favorite. I think the race comes down to the 3 horses that you mentioned, with one question mark. And the question mark would be Reluctant Bride, who's never been on the dirt, for Patrick B. and Cohn, but it's a Spitestown gone west out of a broken bow mare. So while, she is bred for turf, Spitestown's run on anything. She is a question mark. He's 32% turf to dirt. Pratt rides the horse. I think if you're betting exotics and, pick 4s, 5s, or 6s, this is a horse that I would tend to include at a big price because it's just a question mark. But I think the race does run through Safi Joseph's horse, the bottom horse, Tonalist Shape, with the other 2 you mentioned being the logical contenders. But I lean here for a couple of reasons. I think Pletcher's horse off the 1 maiden race is going to get overbet. Kind of reminds me of that Dream of Julia horse a couple of years back that just ran lights out and everybody loved it. And, she kind of regressed off those big races. Obviously, $1 million purchase, well regarded, definitely delivered in the debut. But, that's a maiden race. Now she's going against a horse who, in my opinion, has a little bit more bottom to her. And if you look at Tonalist Shape, what I really like, her first race for Juanavilla, she wins. But her next race, she really goes forward in the second start off the layoff. So I anticipate the same kind of pattern. I anticipate, the February race, a race that she moves forward off of. And 3 for 3 over the track with that bottom, a nice outside draw with Tyler Gaffleone, can sit just about anywhere he wants her to be. And make the winning move. And if Reluctant Bride isn't some kind of sneaky dirt horse, I think that she'll handle the other 2, Spice is Nice and Bayerness, who both also figure. And I would lean to Bayerness.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
Spice is Nice, but not over the bottom horse. I mean, Bayerness is first time 3-year-old. She's 2 for 2. She looks really, really good. But in this particular, and I don't shy away from fresh horses, first time 3-year-olds especially. But I'm going to give the edge to the bottom horse with the race under her belt.
That's the difference. Yeah, that's the difference to me too. Is that if Byron has had another race, or that race was a little more recent, I might lean. I would be a little bit more confident, and just depending on like the price when they all come down, I'll be interested to see what the price difference between the two of them is. But what's very nice about Tonalist Shape is, and what will make her tough is, like you mentioned, she got that race under her belt, and yeah, it was a little low. The figure came back a little low and stuff. But when you watch, like, she was never in trouble. She was never in doubt. She was really doing it very, very easily there, and she's impressive, man. It's there's a couple nice fillies in this race. I think it's a good Devona Dale in race number 10. Let's move to the 11th race, which is the Canadian Turf in here. Wow, this one is one of those where I think 3 or 4 different horses might vie for favoritism in here. You look at a couple horses who come out of Tampa Bay race, and they didn't run well, but they could figure in here, like Caribou Club and Emery. But I mean, you could really sell me on anyone in this race, because there are many directions to go in here. Who are your plays in this one?
Well, I agree. There's a couple of different contenders in here, and I can make a case for all of them. I think the horse that's going to be in a position to win the race, turn it for home. You know, I when I handicap a race, I try and look at how they're going to run. You know, what's going to happen, where everybody's going to be at every point. And I think turning for home, the horse you're going to have to beat is Pletcher's horse, Sombaye. I think Sombaye is going to be able to sit right off the speed and probably has the quickest move of any of these. And I think that Pratt will make that move, turn it for home, and that's going to be the one that they have to run down and get past down the lane. And I think that might be a little tough to do. I think that, you know, the other contenders are Hey Dakota, who's a different horse in the Jason Service barn, yep. I think, obviously. Even though he beat somebody last time, I don't know that he'll get that kind of trip and beat him today, or Saturday, rather. Caribou Club was a little disappointing at Tampa, but figured in that race and, you know, may have needed it, you know. And Tom Proctor's a guy I respect a lot, doesn't run a lot of horses, but Glen Hill Farm does things the right way. They've got some nice horses, and this horse was in really good form at the end of last year and can definitely improve off that race. Goes back to Fergal Lynch, who seems to ride this horse very well, have a lot of success with him. Dangerous horse. Another horse I find very interesting in here, and this guy has beaten me with so many of these kind of horses that I don't like to allow him to do it anymore, but Mr. Dumas, who goes first time for Mike Maker. His 2 firm turf races look better to me than the 2 good turf races, which a lot of people might not agree with that, but I just think those were 2 good races. Fresh, back on a firm turf, first time Mike Maker. Looks like he'll be in a good spot. Dangerous horse, in my opinion, and another horse who I think is dangerous at a big price is this horse, Flying Scotsman.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to mention too. I'm glad you mentioned him. Yeah.
I mean, takes blinkers off, which Jack Sisterson does pretty okay when he does that. But this horse has some really good races and some hidden form. His really only bad race was the race at Saratoga, but I'm willing to forgive that. From the 11 hole, going a mile and 3/16 at Saratoga, he was 30-1 that day. I'll give him a pass for that one. You know, you know, you take away that race, and he's really never run a bad one. And
he was a real like buzz horse last year. I remember like after a couple of like coming into the Sisterson barn, and I remember even I picked him in like a fantasy league, and I've just always been really high on him because I remember his big race out at Del Mar in 2018, and he's one of those really high upside horses that you mentioned. Like you start to dig and you go race by race, and you're like, wow, you know what, this horse has only thrown in like one real clunker, and he seemed like he had an excuse for that you just made. So, you know, those are the kind of long shots that are nice. And you know, he has a tough post, but for a horse that is going to be a little bit of a price, what's nice is he has tactical speed. So, he's not going to be coming from dead last. Sometimes when you play a long shot and they're way out of it and it's going slow early on, you just know you got no shot. When you play a horse like this, at least he's going to give you a good run for your money because he should be, right in the mix and kind of insert himself into the race pretty early.
I agree. Very dangerous. I think that Pletcher's horse, Sambaye, is the way the race shapes up, the horse to beat. I think coming down the lane, he's going to be the one they have to get by. But he's far from a lock. It's a wide open race. I think we hit on the contenders.
Yep, I think so too.
The only other one that I would really look at in there is maybe English B, who will probably be a deep closer. So if the race is falling apart, I probably wouldn't be shocked to see Castellano closing on the outside with this horse and, maybe have a shot. But, I'd really have to be reaching to get to him. I like the other ones better, but, my top choice would be Sambaye.
Let's get to race number 12, the Gulfstream Park Mile. And you'll see a lot of the older horses that maybe would be in a spot like this that are going to be running in Saudi Arabia, or maybe they ran in the Pegasus, or maybe they're pointing to Dubai in a month or so from now. So you're left with a field that looks like kind of a grade 2, grade 3 field. And Mr. Freeze has become really, really good over the last, 4 or 5 races. He's been very consistent. He shows up from just like a figure standpoint. He's been running some really good, like buy your numbers and speed figures. But you can, if you get away from him, that's where you can really build cases for lots of others in here. So are you going to kind of start with Mr. Freeze? How do you feel about him in this race and then moving forward?
Well, I'll share something with you about Mr. Freeze. I loved Mr. Freeze in the Pegasus and made a very, very big bet on him that day. And if you notice, I think he was 20-1 on the morning line that day. Nobody was talking about him. And when he opened up 9-1 and went off 7-1, I can really say, because he did not win, that I was probably somewhat responsible or partially contributory to that drastic reduction in his morning line. It's probably too high to begin with at 20-1, but I don't think anybody expected him to go off 7-1 that day. He ran a really good race. He had more trouble than shows in the running line. He didn't break well and was rushed up on the outside to get to the lead. Dan Tordman from America's Best Racing, the anonymous Dan, who you probably know and know of. I was talking to him before the race, and he loved Bodemeister. And when I told him I liked Mr. Freeze, he goes, well, how could you like him? There's no way he gets the lead off of Bodemeister. And I said, listen, I'm not only going to guarantee you Mr. Freeze is going to win, which he didn't, admittedly, but I guarantee you without any doubt he's in front of Bodemeister.
I think you said Bodemeister a few times too when you mean Bodie Express, who's the son of Bodemeister,
right.
Which is an honest mistake with Bodie Express.
Exactly, right. Yeah, Bodie Express. And he was in front of him despite the trouble that he had. I thought he ran a huge race. Now, I will be the first to admit I was wrong. He wasn't beating Mucho Gusto no matter what. Mucho Gusto just came and brought his game, and he was absolutely the better horse that day, so I lost because I don't reverse exactas or anything like that. Of course, Mucho Gusto was the big exactor I played for second, but that's just how it goes. So, I don't get married to horses, and that, I don't, have to come back with them, but it's hard for me to get away from him because, the reason I liked him so much that day is I knew a little bit about him. I knew how good he was coming into the race. I knew he was going to improve. I knew that they had done some things with him differently and corrected some things with him that he was running well with, but, would run better without. So I took a shot with him, and, although he didn't win, he ran good enough. Now, the thing about it is, it's hard for me to get away from him because when I look at the way the race shapes up tomorrow, he's well drawn in the 9-post, so he's able to sit or stalk or do whatever Franco wants down that 1-turn mile.
He's like of all the horses who have like some tactical speed, he's to the outside of all of them.
Exactly.
which
So
is really nice.
it gives him some options. Romans has been really, really cold this entire meet. He's, I think, 3 for 40 or something like that. It's hitting like 5-6%, something like that, which is, terrible for him. But he's a great trainer. I know he likes this horse. I like his work. On February 23rd, the Minute Breezing, I think, was an excellent work. He does have 3 works after the Pegasus, so that tells me he's on his game and can, certainly go forward or at least run the same race. So I do like Mr. Freeze. He is not a single. There were 2 other horses that I have to use. One of those horses is Haikal down on the inside. The 2 horse. I always thought this horse had a little bit of ability. I never thought he was a Derby horse when he was on the Derby trail. But I did think he was a nice horse. I like his return race. I'm a big fan of Kieran McLaughlin's second off the layoff. Always have been. This horse does go forward second off the layoff, and he might be a decent 4-year-old. I got to give him a shot in here at a big price, hopefully. The other horse that I'm really scared of is another horse that ran on the Pegasus undercard, and that's Zendin. Zendin I've watched since Victor Barboza had, okay? And he's been in a lot of races where he just really didn't have a chance. There was just too much speed, too many early presses, just never really had a chance. And then Fletcher gets him, runs him first time at Gulfstream Park West. He wins, fast race at Gulfstream Park West. Comes back in the Mr. Prospector, kind of thrown to the wolves a little bit against Imperial Hint, Lasting Legacy, Diamond Ops. Those are some really, really good sprinters. Had that one race off the belt. I kind of think he ran okay. Last time, there was a ton of speed. He outfought all the speed, shook away turning for home, and then lost to a late run from a horse that, figured to make a late run in a race that was really crying for a closer. I think he ran very well to run second. It's his 4th start for Pletcher. I think he's got an easier time with the pace this time than he did last time. And I think he's dangerous. So I'm on those 3, but leaning towards Mr. Freeze. So, the way I bet, if I did bet a pick 5 or a pick 6 or something, I'd use the 3 of them on one ticket, and then I'd go back for another ticket with, Mr. Freeze. So
Yep,
I would
similar. Yeah, that's similar to the way that I play too, and it's smart because then if your strong opinion's right, you give yourself a ton of other bullets in the other races around, and if not, you beat Mr. Freeze with one of the other prices, then you're just in great shape that way. So that's always a smart approach. I'm always playing multiple tickets, even if it's just one small one that can kind of back up my strong opinions. Because how many days are you're kind of right with a lot of your horses, you're scratching your head, going like, how did I not hit this ticket? And so sometimes it's always nice to give yourself like just a second different opportunity to score. As we move into the 13th race, what's interesting about this group is this has kind of been that group that beats each other up all the time. And, you just kind of never know which of these 4 or 5 horses that are, Zulu Alpha, Channel Maker, Sadler's Joy, always in some of these distance turf races. And it always feels like whichever one of them gets the better trip is going to win. And then Zulu Alpha just put forth a monster effort winning the Pegasus World Cup Turf, and that was coming off a pretty good effort in the Breeders' Cup a couple months prior. So I guess at least from a talking point, you have to start in this race with Zulu Alpha, whether we're going to use or whether we're not going to use. So what's your approach to race number 13?
This is an easy one for me. I like a thread of blue, wire to wire.
Yep. Yeah. There's just no other speed in here.
Nobody that can run with him. Yeah, I just think he goes. I like Bravo. So I love Luis Saez, and I would probably rather have him on the horse because he's tough to get by. Whether he's got gas in the tank or not, he's just tough to get by. Yeah. But Bravo is very, very good on this kind of horse. I think he'll put him right on a lead. I think he'll be able to slow it down. I think the last race was a perfect setup race for this one. Horse is 3 for 4 at Gulfstream, loves the track. I think can absolutely get this distance of ground. and I think will be very tough to reel in on a lead. I'm not inclined to get past him. I mean, yeah, Zulu Alpha was huge last time, but did get that perfect seam up the inside to run up. Was coming off a sneaky troubled trip in the Breeders' Cup. A lot of people really liked him on Pegasus Day. I think he was also aided by a couple of horses getting in trouble. If you remember, Chad Brown's horse Without Parole got in a ton of trouble in that race, or it's hard to say that the outcome might have been different, but his trouble was so bad, I can say the outcome might have been different. And Sadler's Joy got sandwiched out of the gate and really, just about eliminated. So
it felt like a lot of horses didn't show up too. Yeah, like they either had an issue or like they just didn't show up. And he was kind of he improved. He got, I thought, a pretty decent trip, whereas a lot of others, they didn't run well and didn't get a good trip. And it's like when that happens in a race, one horse can dominate the race and maybe look a little bit better than they should be.
I agree with that for sure. For sure. I mean, taking nothing away from him, he ran a huge race.
Yeah.
I'm with
this is a race. I'm with you. I think I got the thread of blue on top all over. You got the nice prep out of the way last time too. So he's not a horse that he shouldn't be short here. That shouldn't be the problem. If he's not good enough to win, then that's one thing. But we should get a horse who's going to be fit in this race, who's going to be set up very well coming into this race, and who's going to have every opportunity on the front end in a race that just doesn't seem like if anybody goes or if anyone's in front of him, it's going to completely take them out of their game. It wouldn't make sense to. So I'd always like to take a horse like this who should have a couple length lead on the field. The one thing I hope we don't get with this, John, is he can go and maybe stretch this field out a little bit. I don't want it to be like 51 where he's trying to keep the closers in the race. I'd rather see this horse open up 3, and try to outrun them.
I agree with that, and I usually prefer that with a speed horse, especially on the grass like this. And I kind of think that's what Bravo will do, just knowing his style and knowing how he rides. I mean, he likes to go and give them their shot, and if they can make it, they make it. And I have a feeling he'll do that. But no, I agree. That's always a little bit of a concern. You want to get some distance between you and the rest of them, so they're a little tired when they got to run and catch you. So we'll see. Another horse I look at is a horse that falls into the category of what you said and just not showing up last time, and that's Admission Office. It's funny. When he came back this year, or when he ran last year in the Shadwell Mile, I was looking for a big race from him. He didn't fire. In the River City, he just came from so far back and so late and was wide. And I'm like, I don't know. He's got to win next time. And in the Fort Lauderdale in December, I'm like, he's got to win this race. And he didn't. And again, he was so far outside and just, I'm like, what are they doing with this horse? And, last time I thought he was really, really dangerous and really, really live at 22-1, completely overlooked. And he just didn't show up, I think this horse has a big race in him. And I think he's sitting on it at some point. I don't know that we'll see it tomorrow, but I don't know that we won't. And I think when he does run that big race that I feel is in there somewhere and ready to come out, I think he can beat a field like this.
Yeah, I agree. He's got a lot of upside. He just is. I'm with you. Like I'm never one that just dismisses him. And really, in any field that he shows up in, because he's good enough to beat anyone. It's just like you said, he needs a right trip or maybe just the right field, the way it's going to shape up. And this isn't with Zulu Alpha running a big race and Sadler's Door. We're not talking about this as a group of anyone that we would be scared of, right? And that's why we're looking to a horse like a Thread of Blue who might be able to steal this race, because I don't feel like there's any absolute monster in this group to be terrified of. So you can build a case for a horse like Admission Office in a race where you and I hope they're going to be winging it early with the Thread of Blue.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get to the Fountain of Youth. I asked John for about 20 minutes or so. We've already been going for over 30, but that's what happens when we start talking racing. We will go for a couple hours if nobody would stop us.
We've done that before.
We have. Yeah, we definitely have. So let's get to the Fountain of Youth, the big one worth some of the Derby points. And I guess the story of this race when they drew the field, it was only looking like it was going to be like a field of 8 or so, but 3 or 4 horses were entered into this race last minute. And what ended up happening is Chance It, who is going to be one of the top contenders in this race, who was the winner of one of the local preps in the Mucho Macho Man, in that race actually came back really, really high as far as the numbers and the figures are concerned. He earned a 99 Beyer speed figure in winning that race. He's parked on the extreme outside, and you could tell that the connections were not quite happy with that. And they made a couple comments about not wanting to waste a race, and who knows, maybe they'll have to scratch. They'll see what the day is like. But that definitely adds a wrinkle to this race when there are probably 2 or 3 others now that were entered that don't have a shot to win this race, but they have now impacted this race in how they park Chance It.
I agree. You got a couple of cheaper horses that look like they don't belong. One of them is Luch's horse, I think, that is actually a maiden. It looks like he doesn't belong. So yeah, I mean, they helped to move that horse way to the outside, and I heard he was going to scratch. I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I kind of heard the same thing. Yeah, that they were definitely. I haven't heard that the horse is scratched, but they're definitely thinking about it. Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, obviously, he's a contender. I fear him, but I usually bet against horses like that because he came off a layoff. And had to run really hard. If you remember, he had to really dig in on the hard driving on the inside.
And he had to battle back. As seen as TV, like middle of the stretch, had the lead, and right. So it was a battle, like a real battle.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So usually, I'll shy away from a horse like that next time out. Because he had to work so hard, and now between that and the post position. But when I actually handicap this race and, look at it, that's why I don't follow any rules because they're always made to be broken. So normally I bet against a horse like that. But in this particular situation, I would have a hard time tossing him because the race to me is crying for somebody that could either sit or come from well off the pace. And he's one of the few in here that I think can sit and are also good enough to win. There's a couple in here that can sit. I just don't think are good enough to win. But he's one of the ones that, checks all my boxes. So, other than the post and that hard race last time out, I would have to leave him in as a contender only because, he fits the profile of what I think this race is calling for, which is a horse that, doesn't have to fight for the lead, can sit off a little bit, make a move, and then win. But I do think the race does go through Dennis's moment. I think if he runs back to that Iroquois, he's going to be awfully tough.
That trip too, right? The sitting.
Yeah.
Just like you mentioned, like exactly. He has some speed, but he does have the ability to sit. He's just been a horse that's kind of been his own worst enemy with the breaking and the starts. It's amazing when you see a horse like this, right? Who's had 4 starts, 2 of them have just been incredible, and then the other 2, he had a stumble where he clipped heels and he lost the jock, and then a bad stumble where he finished last from the rail and was never in the race. So it's just like Jekyll Hyde. Which Dennis are you going to get to show up? When he shows up, he has as much ability, I think, as any of the horses that are on the Triple Crown Trail this year.
I tend to agree. I don't know if he's as good as Dale Roman says he is. I mean, he's really
yeah, he's very high on him. Yeah.
And I don't know that he's that good. I don't know that he's not yet because, like you said, the 2 races he didn't run exceptional in, he's got legitimate excuses. But I do have questions about him, and I'll share with you what they are. Apparently, he's all that, right? But yet, Dale Romans was at Saratoga at the end of July. This horse ran at Ellis. I have to say why.
Yeah.
That's a red flag to me. Everybody wants to win and break a maiden at Saratoga, especially with a horse that's that good, and you're already thinking Kentucky Derby with. Why debut at Ellis Park? Makes no sense to me. That's one issue. The other thing I will tell you about this horse is that I was at the Breeders' Cup, and the break wasn't his only problem in that race. He might have been able to run okay. There were 2 horses on Breeders' Cup weekend that stuck out to me as horses who absolutely did not handle the racetrack, and to the point where I could see from the stands that they were slipping and sliding and floundering all over it. One of them was Code of Honor in the Classic. After 70 yards out of the gate, I was like, he's done. Draw a line to him. He's just not liking that racetrack at all. Sliding and floundering all over the place. The other was Dennis's Moment. Dennis's Moment broke bad, but got close enough to the pack to kind of, hang with them, but was floundering, was just all over that racetrack. Just couldn't handle it, floundering, just, not liking it to the point where it was very, very obvious. If you watch the replay, you'll see it. So not only did he not break well, but he just didn't like that racetrack at all. So it's a legitimate line through the race altogether. And he does, in my opinion, get a perfect setup here to show his best. I think Candy Tycoon from the rail has to go. I think that as seen on TV with Paco, who's aggressive, is going to be, very close to the pace. I think that Liam's Lucky Charm is going to be right on the pace. Shotsky is going to be going. Et Indian is going to be going. Chance It, if he's in the race, is going to be, really, really close. So you got, half the field is speed or pressers, So I think they got to go early, and that's going to set up for a horse like Dennis's Moment, or maybe a sneaky horse that can come from way back if the race totally collapses. And, you don't often get a price on Chad Brown, and I think you should get one on Country Grammar because he's got to improve by about 10 lengths or maybe 15 lengths to win this race. I mean, he's coming out of a race at Aqueduct where they went 51 to the half, 116 for 3/4. I mean, he's going to be far back, no question about it, probably last early. But in a race with this much speed and a late foal from Chad Brown running in this spot, which is an aggressive move for him, if the race completely falls apart with all that speed, why can't he come running late at 15, 20 to 1?
He's my play in here, John. He's my play.
Then you see it.
He's my play. I got him on top of the logicals. So I'm going to have him with the 5, the 12, and then the 1, who I think can maybe hang around after showing some speed inside. I think he's got a little bit of ability. But I agree with you just from the way that the way that I'm seeing this race unfold. It's Dennis's Moment getting a trip. It's maybe Chance It being able to work a trip where he's not too parked or too far, like losing too much ground. But then it's Country Grammar, who it has some upside. Yes, you're right. He does need to improve. He does need to take a step forward. But if I'm kind of looking at the Mucho Macho Man race and going, maybe that figure was a little bit big. Maybe it was just a little higher than it should have been. If those horses come back a bit to make their figures in the low 90s and Country Grammar takes a step up to right around there, he could hit this race right in between the eyes, and he could really trip out in here. And you get Hobby to jump board for Chad Brown. I kind of like these Chad Brown horses that nobody's talking about, too, right? The under-the-radar ones that you feel.
Yeah, no, always do with Chad. And let me tell you, Chad doesn't run his horses where they can't win.
No.
You know what I mean?
He knows. It's like Baffert. They know they have enough horses, they have enough good horses to where if they enter a horse in the race, they've got a shot because they have the best, they are the best measuring stick of any barns because they've got so many horses at so many different levels. They know what it takes to win at each level. I agree. I mean, I'm going to use the horse based on everything that, we discussed, knowing that, hey, he may be, best he can get is within 10 lengths of the front, but that's okay. I take a shot that the race could set up for a horse like him to jump up. He's a late foal. Why not? It's just that kind of race to me. Yeah. If you're going to be looking outside of, we mentioned obviously that we're not against Dennis's Moment. We're not against Chance It. They're very logical. But if you're, from a gambling standpoint, looking outside of those, the way this race shapes up on paper, all the next tier of contenders are really speedy. Right? And so, you're looking at the next, the Candy Tycoon and the As Seen on TV and the Liam's Lucky Charm and the Et Indian and the Shotsky. And you're thinking, wow, they might all be kind of in that pressing, want to be forwardly placed. And then you kind of just start eliminating them and you look to, okay, Maccabim's probably over his head a little bit. Same thing with Master Day. The Falcon might be in tough. And you kind of circle back to Country Grammar and go, this horse hasn't really done a whole lot wrong yet. There's a lot of upside here.
A lot of upside, absolutely. And sooner or later, one of these days, Chad Brown is going to win a race on the dirt with a horse like this. And all those people that say, oh, he never wins on the dirt are going to be standing there with their mouths hanging open because, he's an excellent trainer regardless of what surface they're running on. So, if he's got enough confidence to put this horse in the spot, I got to think the horse has a shot. And the other thing I like is the horse is at Payson Park, which is an excellent track to train over. One of his main owners, Peter Brandt, owns Payson Park now. So this horse is over there with the Payson string that he has. And he's working very, very well over there. I mean, those are really nice Payson Park breezes. Those steady 49 breezes are really nice at Payson. He's a live long shot. I mean, he should be every bit of 15, 20, 25 to 1 in that field. Even with Chad Brown training him, he should be a really big price. And he's going to be on my tickets for sure.
The Pick Six King, Jon Stettin. Jon, this was a blast. It was. It's too long. It's been too long since we had a conversation for a while about the races. So I would love to pencil you in to come back in a month and talk about the Florida Derby and the Florida Derby undercard, and we can do something very similar for Florida Derby.
Be my pleasure. Looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Let the folks out there know, where can we find you on social media and the info for Past the Wire.
It's pastthewire.com. It's our website, and started as my website, but now it's really just a very diversified horse racing website with columns of opinion and all the racing news as well. I've got a tracking trip section up there, which is a subscription pay section, but it's very inexpensive. It's like $20 a month or something like that.
And it's worth it. I'll tell you right now, it's absolutely worth it.
I put horses on there that have had troubled trips or ran with or against a bias, ran better than it looked, worse than it looked, stuff like that. All kinds of trip notes. It's not a selection service. You're not going to be buying picks. It's just, second set of eyes, trained eyes, like I like to call it. And on social media, it's at Jonathan Stettin, Pick Six King, and at Past the Wire. We have a separate Twitter for that. And it's on Facebook, Instagram, Past the Wire. We're all over. It's funny. I never dreamed this would happen, but for the last couple of months, we've been second in traffic in the horse racing industry on our website, only to Blood Horse, which I think is amazing. We've been, we've had more traffic than anyone else out there, except for Blood Horse.
It's just good. It's the content. It's great content. And I've worked with you in many different capacities now, Elite, doing some stuff with Past the Wire. The thing about you empower good, smart people to have their approach. You don't try to micromanage anyone. You just kind of let people cover what angle, what side they want, and then it just makes for people that are happy to write. They're happy to work with you, and I love checking in there because, like I said, sometimes we get news or if we're following certain people in racing, everything comes out either all positive or all negative. And I want a place that will kind of give me both sides of the apple, right? Because there's never anything that's all positive. There's never anything that's all negative. I want someone that's critical when they need to be critical, and that will be, praising when praise need be. And that's why I just love reading in. I'm checking in on Past the Wire all the time, and I'm glad that things continue to improve over there and people are taking notice.
Appreciate that. Now, I'll leave you with this. I know you're not supposed to talk politics, so I'm not going to do that. But I'll just say this: I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about the political climate in America right now. What I said to them was this: I said, listen, I don't care if you're a left or right or Democrat or Republican. If you're always all left extreme or you're always all right extreme, that should be your first clue that something's wrong.
Yep.
And you're thinking like a robot, because both sides, even if it's only occasionally, everybody has a good idea now and then. There is that broken clock theory. Everybody's right twice a day,
100%.
You can't always be all this way or all that way and tell me you're thinking for yourself. Because
it feels like BS when
right,
someone's
exactly,
doing that.
Exactly.
Because it's like they're picking and they're finding things to focus in on instead of just reacting and responding to what's happening.
And tying into that, what you said, I try and keep it real. We say our site is Horse Racing Uncensored. If something needs to be said, I'm not going to be scared to say it. A lot of people call me around and say, why isn't anybody saying anything about the, some things you can't just, when you're, quote, a media outlet, you can't just say things that you can't back up.
That's
what I mean?
That's
so,
true.
It's not that I'm afraid to say something, but if I don't know it for a fact,
You got to be able to prove it.
Support it. I can't just say it. You know what I mean? I could say I think this is going on, or I suspect this might be going on, but I can't say so and so's cheating because I can't prove that. But if I could, you could rest assured I would not be scared to say it at all. So we try and keep it real. We give a positive and negative approach to whatever the situation calls for.
I think critical is the better word, right? It's just like critiquing things, and it's okay to be critical about a sport that, man, you and I have, and particularly you who have been doing it your whole life and have, put hundreds of thousands of dollars into and taken back, right? Like, you've been a major customer of this sport for so long. You're allowed to have an opinion, to voice your opinion, whether it be right, whether it be wrong. You've earned that by now. So
I've bet horses, I've owned horses, I've bred horses. I've been a jockey agent. I've worked at racetracks. I mean, I've been in the game my whole life. I've seen a lot, and I'll be the first to admit our game has a lot of issues that need to be resolved. And I have very little optimism that we'll do it. When you show me that we could stagger the post times on the big days, then I'll believe that maybe we can work together and get some of these issues resolved. If we can't stagger post times, how are we going to do anything?
And that's easy. In the last couple months, people would post on social media. They would do it themselves. They would post a little chart where it's like, hey, look, all you have to do is do this. I've worked at TVG before. I've been in the control room, in the production room, when they just call over to racetracks sometimes too, and they can ask, hey, and some racetracks are really good about it, but others are just, they'll say, no, F you, and you'll ask them, hey, if you can just hold your race for like a minute or two, we're going to run another race live, and then your race will get some more coverage leading up, which is going to mean more money into your pools, and they don't care.
Right. It's inexplicable to me. I just don't get it.
No.
I don't get it.
And we'll when we bring you back to that'll be a one conversation that we have one time where we just kind of come back and we just talk about positives, negatives, and maybe things to fix it. I had a conversation like that with Andrew Champagne a while ago, and I love talking with people who have been in racing for a while, because some of these things that we want to tweak, it's not rocket science, John. You know what I mean? We don't. It's not going to take a ton of things. It's just like a logical, common sense thing. That's where we get frustrated.
I agree. And if we can't do the basics right, how are we going to do anything else?
Well, one thing that you and I are going to do, we're going to win some money this weekend, John. We're going to do that for sure. I really appreciate it, man. It was a blast, and I look forward to catching up with you again before Florida Derby. We'll do the same thing again.
Thank you for having me, Gino. Appreciate it.
That is the Pick Six King, Jon Stettin. We're going to go through a recap of some of the picks one more time. A big thank you to John, the Pick Six King, there for the Gulfstream Park analysis. As you can hear, John does a really great job, and he does his homework, and I always love talking racing with John. I'm going to rattle through some opinions that I had at Gulfstream that we didn't get to tackle or touch earlier on in the card. So just some horses to keep in mind as you're playing the Gulfstream card on Saturday. Let's go to race number 3 in here. I thought the number 6, Our Nation on Parade, extremely impressive in his win over at Laurel. Now he comes into the Ritvo barn. In that October 19th race, there were 3 next out winners. Third place finisher won the next 2 races in a row, won a first level allowance, then $100,000 made Maryland bred stakes. The 4th place finisher won a first level allowance next out. The 8th place finisher won a small stakes next out and has won 2 of the last 3. And he showed good speed. He was right on the lead. He settled back. He was in third. He was inside. He was a couple off. He moved through in the 2-path, and he angled around. It was a really nice W, and he opened up. I think this one can continue to step forward. Let's put the number 6, Our Nation on Parade, on top. We'll make a win wager if we can get 5-2. In race number 4, the Palm Beach, I thought the 2 B catcher coming into this race very nicely. I expect him to continue to progress. I think he's a long shot. That makes some sense in here. I will include with the 10, Famished, and the 12, Vitology, who are just very logical contenders and make a ton of sense in there. So we'll put B catcher, the 2 on top, probably a win wager we'll use in some of the exotics with the 10 and with the 12. Let's skip to race number 8. This is the next race that I have an opinion on. And there are two horses that I want to include in whatever exotics that you're playing. The number 4, Awaken, will be my top selection. He adds the blinks after just a brutal start where he really showed some ability late. I played him last time out, and I've been waiting for him to return to the races. And any little progression in here, he will be really, really tough. I actually think he's a little better than the horse who was in front of him, Mr. Candy Ride, who also came from way out of it and who also broke slowly that day. But I think there's a little more upside with the number 4, Awakened. So let's use Awakened. We'll use the number 7, Speedy Mac, who in his second step, he got steadied. He got shuffled back a little bit for a barn who is much better with horses making their second and third starts. So let's use the 4 and the 7 in all of the exotics in race number 8. Let's move to the 9th race. We're going to go to the number 6, In a Hurry, who last out tracked behind horses in a tightly bunched up group, but it was always within a few lengths. He was loaded at the top of the lane. She was loaded at the top of the lane. She got an opening 3 wide and in between horses, and it was a really nice, well-measured win. She continues to progress. For Shug, I think In a Hurry is a must-use in all exotics. We'll use the number 2, Veruca, and the number 3, Declaration Warrior in your exotics too. It's funny because I've had something I saw on Twitter. I've had the Charlie Brown song stuck in my head. I never thought my life would, or Charlie Brown, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Say Charlie Brown? I might have. It's early and I've been up all night, folks. But I've had the old. Maybe this is the hunch play, because I've had the I never thought my life would be anything but catastrophe. And maybe it was trying to point me to the other song from Willy Wonka. I want the world. I want the whole world. I want to lock it all up in my pocket. It's my bar of chocolate. Give it to me now. Little Veruca, salt. Let's use Veruca in the exotics. We'll put the 6 on top of the 2, on top of the 3 in race number 9. The 10th race, the logical horses in here, Spice is Nice and Tonalist Shape. I won't really talk you off of them, but I'll try to talk you on to Bayerness a little bit, who I prefer of the 3 of them in here, and I think you'll get the best value with Bayerness. She had a good start in her last effort, which was stretching out at Churchill Downs. She was right on the lead, and then she sits a close-up third. She's 3 deep. She's tracking back. She's a couple lengths off. She starts to move up without really being asked, but then she's quickly looking like she's all in. I thought she was done. She's not traveling as well as the 2 in front of her mid-stretch. And then she's a few lengths back, and all of a sudden she just hits this second gear. She really starts to respond to urging. She gets up late for a determined win. Bayerness, I'm going to make my top selection there, and I'll make a win wager on the number 7 in race number 10. In the 11th race, horses to include in here, the 2 for me, Caribou Club, the 4, Hembry, and the 12, Flying Scotsman, who you heard us talk a little bit about with John. I thought Caribou Club and Hembry should both come out of that Tampa race and run a lot better in this spot. In race number 12, the Gulfstream Park Mile, I think Mr. Freeze is a horse that you can't try to beat. I think you'll use him in all exotics. And I'll use the 7 True Timber along with him, who adds the blinks. He got bumped around going into the first turn. He got shuffled back. He lost a few lengths and the spot he wanted, and he just never recovered in the Pegasus. If you're putting a line through the Pegasus and you're just looking at his 3 races prior to that, he's a major, major contender in here. Don't forget about the number 7, True Timber, to use in your exotics. In the 13th race, A Thread of Blue looks like the lone speed to me. I think he's got a big shot to steal the race. The other logicals in here, Sadler's Joy, Zulu Alpha, Admission Office would be others I would use if you want to go a little deeper. And then in the 14th, in the Fountain of Youth, I'm going to put Country Grammar on top. I think he has the opportunity to take a little step forward, get a really nice trip in here. Candy Tycoon continues to progress from the rail with his speed. Defeated his stablemate last time out, who was your favorite stablemate. The 5, Dennis's Moment. He's going to be the logical one to beat in here. And then the 11 and 12 would be the other 2 I use in some of the exotics. Ete Indian, who held pretty well after flashing speed, and then Chance It, who, if he doesn't get parked too wide, he has the opportunity to sit off and maybe work out a nice trip. So we'll see in that 14th race, but we'll put the number 7, excuse me. God, I'm all over the place. The number 7, Country Grammar, our top selection. So best of luck at Gulfstream Park. Hope we help you make a little money, and make sure to go follow John and Dan online. They do a great job handicapping the races. Let's shift over from Gulfstream to Sam Houston. And we're going to talk Sam Houston Friday. Remember, there's a pick 5 carryover. You're welcome at Sam Houston for Friday. And that pick 5 carryover, there was 17,000 carried over. It was a pool of 25 grand. That would have been frickin' mine. Let's go to race number 2 here. The 5 is going to be really, really tough. So I think that's, to me, just a single with Evil Ways, a really chalky single to start. In the 3rd race, I like the 4 Zip It Up My Sister. There really isn't that much speed in here for this type of a race going 5 furlongs. She broke well, but so did 3 others, and she ended up too deep. She gets shuffled back a little bit in between horses. I'm expecting a different kind of trip for Zip It Up My Sister. Let's use the 4. We'll put the 4 on top of the 11, on top of the 12, the 1, and then the 9 is how I'm going to approach that 3rd race there. And we can use them all in the pick 4, the early pick 4, because we're going to single in race number 2. And then in race number 4, 1, 2, 3, 6. The 1A Pompeiano is my top selection. I think if you put a line through his grass race and just key off the 2-back race at Retama, anything close to some of the better dirt races that he had would fit really, really well in here. The 2 American League is going to be tough, dropping in class for Broberg. The 6 Towering Oak gets the services of Parker jumping aboard. So let's go 1A, 2, 6, 3. That's the order that I have in race number 4. And then the 5th race, good luck in here. I'm going to go very deep in this one. The 4 Marcy's Gray Girl is where I start. She sat 3rd on the inside. She was a couple lengths off. She angled around 3 deep. She kind of got pinned in for a bit. She was second best. The number 6 Unapologetically, who had to work out a trip behind horses from the rail, now going to go second start since May. I think takes a nice step forward in here. The number 12 will include in all of our exotics. Vela Zig comes in from Fairgrounds. The 1 the entry of the 1 Magical Ice and the 1A Magical Force. The 5 My Fair Maid. You want to go a little deeper. The 10. So you can see this is a race where I'm going to spread out a little bit. So the early pick 4 will be something like this. Single to 5 in race 2 with 1, 4, 9, 11, 12, with 1, 2, 3, 6, with 1, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12. That's the early pick 5, or the early pick 4, which is races 2, 3, 4, 5. And in those races, the number 4, Zip It Up My Sister in race 3, that would be one of the horses I would maybe bet a few bucks to win on. Pick 5 carryover, which starts in race number 6. Another race where I'm going to be spreading out a little bit. So let's start with the 4 Bo T. We're going to have on top, toss the races off the grass. Just key in off the term form for Bo T. The number 11, Priest and the Rabbi. 3rd off the bench, coming in off of a sneaky good 4th last time out in a productive race that has already produced a next out winner. The number 12, Humor. Makes a ton of sense. The only issue I have with Humor is we haven't seen since July, so maybe he needs a race for his best. The 10, Samishin, who I liked last time out. He didn't have the best of trip, and he's getting a little class relief in here. The 1, Yowzer, you want to go a little deeper. And then the 6, Mujab Jr. So, I mean, I could make cases for all of them in the first leg of the pick 5 sequence. I think you can shorten up in race number 7 a little bit. I like the 11, Detroit 66, who's going to go 3rd off the bench. Second time with this rider jumping aboard who has figured him out. He broke slowly last time out. He was 3 deep. He was in between. He was 6 off. He was 6th. He moved up to the 2 path. He was 3rd. He was within a couple lengths, and he was a little bit flat late. It wasn't a bad effort. Now you're going to go 3rd start off the very long layoff. The 11, Detroit 66, could be set for the absolute best. Let's go the 11, 1, Mucho Dinero. If you want to go a little deeper, the 9 I can build a case for and make some arguments for their chances to win. In race number 8, let's go 3, 2, 4 with Max Pound Dowdy, who was close up, who was 3 deep in between. He had to take back a little bit out of a tight spot. He angled around, and it was an okay 4th, and that kind of an effort is good enough to beat a group like this. I think a wild card is the 2, who debuted in a stakes race up at Century Mile that has produced a couple next out winners, and this barn has been only sending out live runners at the meet. And then Chakota with the speed, the 1 to catch in here on the drop. That's the 1 to catch and beat. 3, 2, 4. We'll use those 3 in our exotics. In race number 9, we'll go with the 7 to kick to start What Power, who was a good third coming off the bench. I liked What Power a lot last time out. Just a repeat of that effort would make him very, very tough. Blue Harbor, super logical, top contender in here. The number 3, Papa Rizzo with big speed. If anyone has the opportunity to steal this race, it might be the 3. And then the 4, Patriotic, who was a good runner-up last we saw. That was back in September, and that was a race where he's gone to the bench for a while, and he was off for a couple months prior to that. So I don't love that, but he still fits really well in here. 7, 8, 3, 4. In race number 10, to close things out, we'll use the 7, Laura's Central Bank on top with the speed. Second off the bench. Should be really tough to run down on the slight drop. The 12, Funky Justice. I think she has a little more speed than she was able to show last time out, but she should sit a nice trip from the outside. The 2, Hong Kong Helen, started to get into it late. This is a good spot for her. She should have every opportunity to run them down. I hope she can get away from the gate, because she's had some issues starting, and at 5.5 furlongs, that puts her behind the 8 ball. And then Anna's Lingerie, the number 6 in here, who has the speed with the race under the belt. So 7, 12, 2, 6. We'll play a late pick 5, something like this. 1, 4, 6, 10, 11, 12, with 1, 11, with 2, 3, 4, with 7, 8, with 2, 7, 12. And, in a pick 4 sequence, it could be something like this, where you use just like all the horses that I have. In the 7th race, it would be something like 1, 9, 11 with 2, 3, 4, with 3, 4, 7, 8, with 2, 6, 7, 12. That basically includes all the horses that we have in the last few races. It's not the best way to approach a pick 4 sequence, but you probably want to try to beat a favorite or two, but that just kind of gives you the full coverage. And then we'll repeat the horses to use throughout the day. The 3rd race, the number 4, Zip It Up My Sister. The 6th race, the number 4, Bo T. 7th race, the number 11, Detroit 66. And the 9th race, the number 7, What Power. Let's get you over to Sam Houston for Saturday. And we'll play some Saturday night. Sammy Houston, get your past performances out for February the 29th. Okay, Saturday, February 29th. Let's start in race number 2. A lot of times I don't start in the first if there's Arabian races there. I just kind of skip it and play the early pick 4 that starts in race 2. So I like the 3 a little bit in here. The 2, I'm a Barn Cat, just raced the other day. I would be shocked if she comes back and races again. So I'm assuming the 2 is going to be out of this race. Even if she's not, if she's in the race, she obviously figures, but she can't be in the race. So it's going to be 3, 6, 1 for me. It looks like the 1 and the 6 are going to flash speed. I think the 6 is the better of the speed. I like the fact that she's drawn to the outside, but the 3 should get a really great trip. Going to go 3rd off the bench. The 5th finisher from the last was a next out winner against the 5 time-restricted claimers, and she had a good start last out. She sat outside. She got hooked 3 deep in a small field. She was 4 deep and in between to the top of the stretch. It wasn't bad at all. The winner that day is a 5-time winner who just ran second in a $65,000 stakes. I think she's coming out of a better race, and she should get a really good trip in here. 3rd off the bench, Will There's a Way, going to be the top selection in race number 2. We'll use in all of the exotics there. Let's move on to race number 3. I'm going to use the number 7 in here. On top, Moonshiner Boy, who February 8th was away a bit slow from the rail, ended up 9th inside, was behind horses, just 3 off, but had nowhere to go. Then got shuffled back, tried to angle around, had to wait for room, finally got a seam, split horses, and moved very well once he had an opening. Moonshiner Boy, I think he's set for a big performance here. Turning back, let's put the 5 in the second spot. That's Nova Notion. Just any step forward wins this race. He was good. He showed speed, and he should have a little more bottom now. He broke really well inside of 4 others who went for the lead, so he had to deal with all the pressure from the inside, and he still battled on really well. The 3, Mr. George, makes some sense. He had a good start. He was pushed 3 wide, and he was in between, but he took back a little bit. He was asked, and then he started to respond. He made a bid. He was up to 3rd within 2 lengths before fading. It was much better than it looks on paper. 7, 5, 3 in race number 3. We'll move to the 4th race. I think the 5 and the 2, I like the 5 as the horse to play. Pleasant Mo, who got absolutely crushed at the start last time out, and he's had brutal trips in her last 2. You're kind of playing her off of her career debut. And then Princess Helena, who was really impressive. She's going to try the grass. The dam didn't have any grass success, no real grass success in the immediate sibs, but she set a nice forward. She was a couple off. She moved to the inside. She split horses. She loomed up. She took the lead prior to the top of the lane, but was immediately tackled by the 3-5 favorite. And that 3-5 favorite was one who had already raced 5 times at Saratoga, at Keeneland, at Churchill, at Kentucky, and at Fairgrounds, and who had more experience. So that's not a bad effort from Princessa Helena losing there. I have 5-2, and then the 13, the one for fun, really ran well. He was bumped around at the start. It wasn't a great first quarter mile. She didn't really seem comfortable. She settled down, then she started to move well in between horses all the way up to 4. She was within a couple lengths. She loomed up with dead aim, but she just couldn't go by. No excuses that day, and she has every right to improve a little bit. What's wrong with the 10, Snap It, whose dam won twice on the grass? I think she can improve on the green. And the 1, Dime Quando, the dam also won twice on the grass, was a maiden special weight winner and a first level allowance winner. So as some prices do include that could appreciate the move to the green, the 10 and the 1. Let's go 5-2, 13, 10, 1, and we'll use combinations of them in some of the exotics there in race 4. In the 5th race, the 1, Sarda Bling, was so damn impressive. She had a brutal start. She was dead last. She was 10 off. She sat chilly, and then she moved up without really being asked. She's like weaving through traffic in between horses a few different times. It was just a monster effort. Cabrera leaves. Well, no surprise. He goes to ride the Carl Broberg horse in the 3, Miss Photo. And Miss Photo makes sense, and why I like her in here is she can sit a little bit. So I have the 1 on top of the 3, on top of the 9. That is Blue Darter, who is going to make the second start since May. Should be more fit today. She has speed. She should be involved and hang around. So let's go 1, 3, 9 there in race number 5. So that early pick 4, a couple different approaches. Something like race 2, 1, 3, 6 with 5, 7 with 1, 2, 5, 10, 13 with 1, 3. Then you could have another ticket that looks something like 1, 3, 6 with 3, 5, 7 with 2, 5 with 1, 3, 9. Let's move on to the late pick 5. It starts in race number 6. We're going to go with the 5, Expensive Lesson, as our top selection. She was outrun early. She was about 10 lengths off, but she really showed some late interest. She's never gone long on the dirt, and off that effort, it looks like it's going to, the 6 furlong closing race, it looks like it's going to set her up very well. She's worth using. Wade jumped aboard and figured her out last time out, and I don't think she has to be as far back, stretching out a little bit to a mile, and the 8's the one to beat. Elstown for Broberg. She should be really, really tough in here. So 5 and 8 I'll use to start that late pick 5. Race 7 I feel like and the 5 is one of those horses that I'll mention as a play, the 5 Expansive Lesson. The 7 is a little bit more of a spread race. The 11 Game Day Decision we'll put on talk with the speed, the ability to get a little aggressive in here and maybe take the lead. I thought Seductive USA is the one to beat. What concerns me is that she just hasn't raced since August. The number 4, Sherrills Ready, coming in off of a good runner-up effort. The number 2, Lethal Move, who was hooked wide into the turn, who was up for an okay 4th against much, much better. And then the 3, Newport Beach, whose speed could have a say in this race if a horse like Game Day Decision can't sneak away from the outside there. So we'll use 11, 8, 4, 2, 3. That's the order we'll put them in the 7th. In race number 8, I like the 1, Front Page. Just cross out that race at Oaklawn and play Front Page off of the December 15th race at Fairground. He's a big player in here. And with the way this race shapes up, if they go too quick early on, this is a horse who will benefit. If they don't go too quick early on, a horse like Dance Kingdom will be really, really tough to beat. So I'll use the 9 in the 2nd spot. I thought the 5, Handsome Traveler, was 3 deep and he loomed up to battle. But Stupefy re-broke in that race, who was the lone speed that day. Handsome Traveler ran well. And then the number 2, Our City, if you want to go a little bit deeper. This is a horse who doesn't love to win races, but definitely picks up pieces and picks up checks a lot of the time. 1952. Race number 9 at Sam Houston. Let's go to the 4, Cats Second Silver. Going to go off the claim for Broberg here, coming out of a productive race where he sat really nicely. I think a similar type trip could beat this group. I'm a Wild Bling is going to be really, really tough. And then 3, Taruka will also include Taruka, who's just been in excellent form as of late. Always shows up with a good effort. 4, 7, 3, the 3 for us to use in race number 9 at Sam Houston. We'll close out race number 10 with the number 9, Inclusively. Look at Inclusively's races sprinting on the dirt. they're really not bad. You can, put a line through the last effort that was on the grass. Then 2 back, you have a race that you can excuse that was in the mud. Look at the December 15th race. Look at the December 5th race. Repeats of either of those two, he's right in this group. He's right on the wire. Let's go with the 9 inclusively on top. The number 7, Mighty Bugsy, will include. The number 5, Jazz Music. And then the number 11, Odie. 9, 7, 5, 11. So a late pick 5 would look something like this, starting in race number 6. 5, 8 with 2, 3, 4, 8, 11 with 1, 9 with 3, 4, 7 with 5, 7, 9, 11. Another approach could be something like 5, 8 with 2, 4, 8, 11 with 1, 2, 5, 9 with 4, 7 with 5, 7, 9. Couple different approaches there for you at Sam Houston. Best of luck this weekend. This was a horse racing heavy episode of That's What G Said. Next week we'll talk a little more football. We'll talk a little more NBA basketball. We're going to start breaking down a couple different TV shows in Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist and in Better Call Saul. So we'll be expanding the horizons a little bit next week. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review everywhere you get your podcasts. Joey, my friend, close us out.